Alright, I hope you're ready. We're back for escape and avoidance. This is going to be rather quick because the chapter covers most of it pretty well. So we'll just continue on and go from here. I will separate out this video with the next one so it doesn't take forever to download and or upload and get transcoded. Alright. Alright, escape and avoidance. Here we are, negative reinforcement. Alright, that's what we're really talking about with regard to escape and avoidance, is that again, we're going to strengthen a behavior, but we're going to do so by contingently removing or avoiding a stimulus. Right? So the definition that we're going to function with here, or work with in terms of this course, is going to be the increasing of a behavior by the contingent removal of a stimulus. So again, the contingent is the part that it's a rule. So you have to do the behavior first. So the behavior causes the removal of a stimulus. And there's two different ways to think about that removal of a stimulus. But we'll get into that in a second. Of course, that's the title. You can escape it or you can avoid it. Right? So from a different perspective, or from a more colloquial perspective here, the loss of a stimulus following a behavior can increase the frequency or occurrence of that behavior, and that is negative reinforcement. So again, negative does not mean bad. You gotta get you don't want to think of that. You don't want to think negative is bad and positive is good. Negative is just the loss of something. So, you know, take an aspirin is the behavior. The loss, what do I lose as a result? My headache. Flip the light switch, right? What do I lose? I lose the light, right? So if I'm turning it off, okay, so I've got light in the room and I'm leaving for the day and I flip the switch and there you go. The light goes off. That negatively reinforces me flipping the light switch if I want the lights off. Okay? Pretty straightforward. Again, here's the contingent part. The stimulus must be present. Oh, I'm sorry, it's not the contingent part. I was misreading my slide. In order to deal with escape, right, the stimulus must be present. Okay? That's you have to have that first. So in other words, think of the car, when the beep beep beep, that sort of thing when you haven't put on your seatbelt, right? So you get in a car, you start driving down the road, and it's beeping, and that stimulus is now present. So when you then connect your seatbelt, it is negatively reinforced by escaping that stimulus. Okay? So with regard to escape, you must already be experiencing that aversive stimulus. Another thing that I've thought of here, or that I've experienced here with regard to escape, has to do with, what do you say, like if you're out in the cold or something like that, you've got your gloves on, you got all that stuff on, and you're still a little bit chilly, so what do? You take and open one of those little hand warmer things, and sure, there's this positive thing added, that heat is actually added, but you're also escaping the cold. So you're escaping that cold feeling on your hands or in your feet or wherever you're putting those little hand warmers or toe warmers or whatever they are, right? So you're escaping that. And that's going to negatively reinforce you using those particular pads in the future. But again, you have to be experiencing something in order to escape it. It's a little different for the other side of negative reinforcement for the avoidance examples. So let's look at the avoidance examples. You may wonder why in the world I've got a picture of McDonald's, because it's reinforcing to avoid it, in my perspective. This is a picture of an international one. I can't remember where this one is. But the idea is that when I've done quite a bit of travel, right, and I've been all over the world, all over Europe, and not in Asia, but different parts of the world, Europe and the Southwest Asia, I should say, and then all over Africa. And McDonald's is all over the damn place, right? I don't care where you go, you can find a McDonald's. At least, well, we couldn't find a McDonald's in Afghanistan, but at least not where I was at. There is one there, but that's a different issue. It's on the base, but for me, avoiding McDonald's, not approaching it, right? When I'm in travel mode or something like that, is reinforcing, right? Because then you're going to get access to the good foods that the country has to offer. For example, it was last year sometime, we were in Greece for a conference, and we zipped around, and we got from the airport, we took the train into town, we're trying to find our apartment where we were staying, and we get out of the subway train thing, and we come up and we're walking down the street, and we start to turn towards our street, and we're in this nice cute little neighborhood, and bam, right in front of you is a McDonald's. No, it's like that's the last thing you want, right? So for us, it's reinforcing to avoid McDonald's, right? We're not going to go in there. We're actually going to avoid that place, and we end up having a bit more fun as a result. So in my particular Greece example, we were kind of escaping it by getting away from it, but we never went in, right? We never actually went in and ate McDonald's, so we avoided that food, and that actually serves as a reinforcer. It makes the whole thing more fun, and it increases the likelihood that I'll eat something other than what I would eat back home. And I used to be a quite picky eater, and it wasn't until I started traveling and avoiding the things that I always had. It's like when I went to Europe the first time, I could have ordered Pizza Hut, but I didn't. I ordered something else, and I ended up getting reinforced for that because I found out that, hey, that food was really good. And then in Africa, it was the same thing. And then each new country, I kept doing this, avoid the same old stuff, right? And it ends up strengthening that particular response of trying new foods, and hopefully you're reinforced by it. Every once in a while you're not, and if you want to know what the not is, look up a smiley. That's all I have to say. It's a type of food. It might take a little bit of searching to figure out what it is, but just know that that's not one that I find reinforcing. All right. So with regard to avoidance, we're going to focus on the fact that these are conditioned diversive stimuli. Okay, so and that happens through classical conditioning, which we'll talk about in the next set of slides here, but you should remember that from human learning. The idea is that we have conditioned stimuli, we have these aversive stimuli that we've experienced. McDonald's for me is one of those aversive stimuli. It came from classical conditioning, basically because I just don't really like McDonald's all that much, but anyway, different story. We're going to then avoid those particular stimuli. Those are things we don't want to see. Another example of a conditioned aversive stimulus can be like a signal, right? So if a signal says that, okay, a warning buzzer or something like that, then it's going to be followed by shock, right? So my example's coming out of the experimental literature here. So again, I've got a warning buzzer, and then I'm going to follow that with shock, right? So that buzzer then will be something that will signal to you to do something, and that doing something, right, engaging in the particular behavior, whatever it is, might get you to avoid the shock. As a result, your behavior is then negatively reinforced because you avoided some particular stimulus. Right? This is what I'm really describing here is discriminated avoidance conditioning. Again, where we're thinking about how you actually avoid a particular stimulus based on the presence of another stimulus. Okay, so one stimulus is there, it's going to signal that something bad is about to happen. So I'll come up with another example here for you. Let's pick on McDonald's and say, all right, maybe you got really sick at McDonald's, so that sign, right, that the golden arches themselves signal, avoid this, and then you won't get sick. There's plenty of restaurants out there that I will avoid just because I really don't like their food. It was just nasty sort of thing, right? So I'm just not going to go into those, and I'm not going to pick on those here. I'm happy to pick on McDonald's, but I'm not going to pick on the other ones. All right. Logically speaking, avoidance is a lot trickier than escape. Escape makes sense, right? So you're experiencing something, and then poof, it goes away, right? You do something, and the light is on. You want the light off. You flip the switch, the light goes off. You escape it, right? Avoidance is logically brutal because how can nothing? So you're avoiding something, right? So you're not actually going to experience something. So how can that lack of experiencing something actually strengthen a response? And that's something that we've had some trouble dealing with in the past. And let's look at what the solution is to this. So again, the problem once again is that nothing can't cause something. But from an avoidance perspective, it sure looks like on the surface that nothing is causing something. The stimulus is not present, right? So the person learns to avoid it. That's the problem, right? Escape conditioning is the basic idea here, where with escape conditioning you know what's going on, you've learned that particular stimulus is happening, and then you can do something to avoid that in the future. Right? Another argument that we can look at here is rule-governed behavior, where you've learned in the past that following rules is a good thing. and all you're really doing is following another rule. Now you're not really sure. It's not that avoidance that's actually working for you or that's actually controlling your behavior. It's the fact that there's a rule present, and that rule is what's controlling your behavior. And the only reason a rule might control your behavior is because in the past rule following has been reinforced. The basic idea here is that you must have experience with that stimulus, right, in order to know to avoid it, and that makes avoidance learning understandable. So, and it makes it palatable in terms of the nothing can't cause something stuff, right? So that's how we're going to deal with this in this particular class. Now there's some theories out there that don't quite match this, that's really about fear conditioning and things like that. And you'll recall some of those from the motivational chapter in the 324 class. And if you'll also recall, there's quite a few problems with those theories. So this one seems to be the nicest one out there. This one seems to be pretty clean, at least in terms of an applied perspective, in the sense that if you've had experience with a stimulus, now you know to avoid that stimulus, right? And that's understandable. Makes perfect sense. All right, a few problems with this stuff. Okay. The verbal behavior issue, right? Verbal behavior is great. You know, all the stuff that I'm doing now is undergoing reinforcement and punishment and all that stuff. But with regard to avoidance, okay, or negative reinforcement, you can run into some certain problems. Think about promises, right? So, as I'm getting ready to explain it to you here, think about what a promise might do. What is the issue there? If I make a promise, okay, and then do I follow through on it? Do I not? What happens, right? If I say I'm going to do something, right, and then I don't follow through with that in the future, right, then you've kind of got this weird avoidance thing going on, and it gets maybe an escape sort of thing. So think about threatening, right? If I threaten to do something and say, I'm going to do, if you don't do this, I'm going to do blah, right? So, or if you engage in that behavior, I'm going to beat you silly, or something to that effect. Well, are you really going to go through with it? Because if you're not really going to go through with it, then you probably shouldn't be saying it, because then it'll weaken that verbal control. Right? Conditioned aversive stimuli. Right? This is another one that's a real problem. Too many things can get conditioned. Right? Too many things can be tied in with that sort of negative experience, with that bad experience, that punisher, if you will, right? So again, conditioned aversive, we've got that context. The context itself can become an entire conditioned aversive stimulus. So think of something along the lines of, I'm drawing a blank here on the context example that I was wanting to use earlier. Shoot, I hate it when I do that. Again, remember that learning happens in a particular context. So and that we're talking about avoidance here, so we have to realize that you've experienced some negative stimulus or some aversive stimulus in the first place. So now the fact that you've experienced that aversive stimulus, it may connect to more things. So let's say the beeping sound while you're driving is a really aversive one, a really strong one. It could be that driving gets connected to that as well. So then driving itself becomes something you want to avoid. And in reality, that's not something that's good, right? That's going to cause problems for you in the future. So that's what we need to worry about too many things getting conditioned. This is part of that stuff that happens when people get anxiety. There's so many things that can get tied in with that anxiety because the anxiety happens in a particular context. And anxiety is an aversive stimuli, so that then might connect with other aversive stimuli, maybe test anxiety, which may then generalize to the class, which may then generalize to other classes, and so on and so forth, where the whole thing of school becomes this sort of anxious situation. So we do have to worry about using these types of tools to control behavior. And that said, you know what, these are probably the most common ones, at least in our society, that we use to control behavior. You're all about driving on the road, and following the rules on the road is all about avoiding a ticket, right? Or avoiding an accident. You stop at the stoplight to avoid the accident. The cop doesn't walk up to your door when you stop at the stoplight and come give you $5. You're not going to get a reinforcer for stopping at the stoplight or at the stop sign. You're not going to get a positive reinforcer. You're going to get an avoidance situation or an escape situation. So our society is largely based on negative reinforcement, but it does have its problems, especially if you're trying to use it to specifically train up a particular behavior. But it's quite functional. There is a lot of examples of it out there. Any medicine, medicinal stuff, any health behaviors, all those things are all negative reinforcement, either through escape, so like taking a pill to reduce your symptoms, so again, reducing the symptom, removing it so you're escaping it, or engaging in healthy eating to avoid long-term problems down the road. There's all sorts of stuff that are very applicable here, but there's problems with it. Again, the verbal behavior stuff, and then if you end up with some anxiety, you can end up with all sorts of conditioned aversive stimuli. And it doesn't have to be just anxiety; it can be all sorts of stuff. Think about how depression plays into this. You start avoiding things because everything is bad, right? And it's all through negative reinforcement, and that avoidance then gets strengthened because then you're not going to go. If you stay at home in my bed, then I can't fail at anything outside of my house. I can't fail at work. I can't fail at school. I can't fail with my friends. I can't fail in a relationship. I can't fail. Blah 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 blah. So you end up getting reinforced for that, and then so it just turns into this nasty cycle. So that's part of the problems that are associated with this stuff. All right, we'll come back in a little bit and talk about classical conditioning.